Hey guys, I'm Blake and I'm here to introduce a new and pretty unique project I have coming up. I recently acquired one of the extremely rare 1960s International Harvester factory diesel light-duty pickups, and I plan to restore it to its original 1960s glory. This is not the truck. This is that truck. Now at this point you're probably wondering why it looks suspiciously like a 1980s Ford Econoline. Well, at some point in the around last 60 years of this truck's existence, for some reason they replaced the original 1960s International Harvester cab with this 80s Ford Econoline body. That's why I wanted to start the video looking at that other 1960s International Harvester truck, because I thought it'd be a little bit misleading if I were to start with this and what it appears to be, and then went into explaining how it's actually a rare and unique 1960s International Harvester truck. What makes this truck so rare, and the components that build that up, are still all here underneath this body. And to specify that, what makes this truck so rare is the factory installed original D301 diesel option it has. So, to further explain how rare and such this truck is, I want to say that before 1970, medium duty and below diesel trucks are extremely rare, really hard to find. And below medium duty, so light duty diesel trucks before 1970 are near non-existent, and the ones you do find are likely part of an island nation for all kinds of stuff I'm not going to get into. But you'll find like older Japanese trucks and all kinds of different things because the price of diesel back then and shipping and all kinds of stuff. But in the United States, it's basically non-existent. As a matter of fact, the first light-duty diesel ever offered in the United States was these International Harvester trucks. The history of getting these D301 options in the International Harvester trucks starts with, in the late 50s, some experimentation. In the medium-duty trucks, it was first offered in around 60 or 61 in the B160 series. And then the light-duty options, according to the research I've seen and that I have, they started in about 63, possibly 62, and then went to 68. So those are the years you could get this option in your truck. International Harvester never advertised this, though, necessarily speaking. It was something that was an option you could go to get a truck from International Harvester, and you could say, I would actually like it to be the diesel option, and they'd work that all out for you. But it was still installed from the factory. If you look at the original line setting ticket for this truck and other trucks like it, we'll get into that in a minute here, it will show on the ticket that it was built with that option. With all that being said, how rare this truck is, according to the research I know and have seen, and I've spoken with a bunch of other people about this, it's about 1 of 20 known to exist, and it's about 1 of under 100 ever made, as far as these light-duty diesel trucks are made. Alright, well, let's get a closer look at this diesel engine I keep talking about. Say hello to our foreman Jingle Bells. So this is a International Harvester D301 diesel. It's near identical to the engines you'd find in the farmall tractors of the time, except for it doesn't have sleeves. But practically they're near identical to the farmall engines, and they are literally the same engine as any of the high-speed applications that you'd have, like combines or mobile power units or loaders. Not added onto tractors, but like Hue loaders and that sort of thing. On top of that, International Harvester shared a lot of components between all of their engines in this family, which include the gas engines. So you might have like a gas 301 or the 264 in the trucks, the 220s, the 240s, that sort of thing. All of these engines, diesel, gas, in this inline 6 series share all kinds of components. But this factory diesel option, like I've been saying, is what makes this truck so unique and rare. It has other options we'll get into here soon too. You'll notice this turbo here. This turbo is not original. They never sold these diesel trucks with turbochargers. But what is interesting about this turbocharger is for high altitude applications of some of these International Harvester products, tractors and all that kind of thing, they did sell an add-on kit for a turbocharger. I haven't checked what turbo kit or anything this is. I haven't looked into any of that yet, but there's a chance that this is an International Harvester kit, which would be kind of cool. Because this truck is so rare and I want it to be near original, in period correct and as close as I can get to original, and I don't want to run the cylinders hot or whatever. I don't care that much for speed. The fastest truck I own goes 55 miles an hour. I don't care. I am not going to put this turbocharger back on the truck is what I'm trying to say here though. I'll keep it in case I do one day change my mind or want for a period of time to have more power, but I'm going to put it back to its original state. You'll see it has this, all these components are original to the International Harvester truck too. This is a vacuum pump. They even saved like the fuel filter housings and such from the International Harvester truck. The air cleaner, even though they did some welding for this new set of piping and such, but the air cleaner is actually built, it's built in, it's not like permanently affixed, but built into the cab of this Econoline too. So they did a great job, the gentleman that had this, but anyways, we're going to be taking it back to original. I plan to make a more detailed video on this subject, but I wanted to quickly show you guys how similar the gas and diesel engine models are in this series with a look at a gas 240 cubic inch from the late 50s side by side. Climbing into the Econoline body, we can take a look at the other side of this D301 engine and also discuss what we know is original and stuff that I'm gonna or plan to keep or not keep, excluding the turbo I already mentioned. To the best of my knowledge, this is a 1967 International Harvester 3/4 ton four-wheel drive truck. It obviously has the D301 option. It has the standard 4-speed you'd find in any other International Harvester trucks at the time. The NP205 transfer case you get with any of the four-wheel drive units. And it's sitting on its original frame. This third stick you'll see here is not original, but something I'd like to keep as it's period correct and would have been a popular option if you had the money. Not that most people did. But it is a 3-speed brownie box, which gives me, according to the tag, a 2.3 something to 1 low range if I'm not mistaken, but more importantly a 0.85 to 1 overdrive. These International Harvester motors, namely the inline 6s, are rated low and do not tolerate over revving very well. So that means that, for example, in all my other International Harvester trucks, if I am in 1-to-1 in the transmission going down the road, just under or at red line, depending on my tire size, I'm at 55 miles an hour, and that's my max, which is fine. I've done that for years. I've been daily driving them for, I don't know, 5 years now, so it doesn't bother me that much, but having an overdrive would be cool. I'm excited about that. Something else that's original, and I'm glad the user kept, is this International Harvester tachometer and the speedometer/odometer here. I'm not sure if all of the diesel trucks came with the tachometer option, but all the ones I've seen, if I remember correctly, have the tachometer, which would make sense because these diesel engines are even less tolerant to high revs than the gas motors, even though they all share very similar components. Now, I know all this stuff about the truck and its originality, you know, the year and the rating based on all kinds of factors like the axles and driveline, but some people may be sitting here thinking, oh, well, why don't you just look at the serial or VIN? And for international people, you'll know Wisconsin Historical Society has that information, so man, oh man, why don't I just do that? Well, let me show you. Without the original cab, the remaining digits for the serial are stamped here in this location. As you'll see, there's some fresh paint. I've done all kinds of stuff, some gentle brass brushing, all the way up to very light, as in particle, sandblasting, some wire wheel. I've done all kinds of stuff slowly with paint and everything to try and recover the digits here. You can barely, I don't know about on camera, but make out an H here, a 7, and some other numbers I'll post in the description and my thought process behind it. But it's over the years of being rusted and repainted at some point in its life. They took care of this truck, and looks like it used to be a plow at some point. Plus it's from Wisconsin. So anyways, I imagine this frame was super rusted a few times and repainted, and they weren't stamped heavy enough to stay. Another set of original components I'm excited to have are these International Harvester stamped locking hubs and these single piece 16.5-inch rims. I actually enjoy the more commonly found 16-inch split ring rims, as it's easy to take a tire off or put a tire on those in the middle of nowhere. But I had a set of 2 of these 16.5-inch rims, so this will make a set of 6 total and give me the opportunity to experiment with some single piece rims. Believe it or not, every single vehicle I have and have been daily driving for a few years now has split ring rims, and I've enjoyed it. I also like to show off the original International Harvester front axle, which is a 44F if I'm not mistaken, but just sold by International Harvester. And let's look at some of the interesting modifications they made to get this Econoline cab on here, as well as improve ride quality to my assumption. So you'll notice these cab mounts are obviously not original. The location, to the best of I'm pretty dang sure the location for this rear spring hanger is original. But if you go to the front side, you'll see some interesting stuff. You have this extension that's been welded on here, where the new spring hanger has been located. You can see the original bolt pattern for that spring hanger would have been here, where this new, obviously non-original cab mount is. So they've moved it forward a few inches. I'm not sure if they moved the axle forward with that. I assume they did. I haven't taken measurements, but the wheelbase of this truck is longer than it should be hub to hub for sure. You can also see on this rear axle they did the same kind of thing, lengthening these springs. You have what looks to be the 2 original mount points for these spring hangers with the remaining bits of the rivets still there. And then further on each direction on the frame, you can see the new mount points for the hangers. What's nice and kind of interesting is they re-riveted those back in, which is the right way to do it. Most people just bolt those hangers back there. Underneath the truck, we can take a peek at the original rear axle, which is the Dana 60 option from International Harvester. And then we can look at the interesting setup they have that I may keep or slightly modify in regards to setting up this brownie box with this driveline. We have our original NP205, which is pretty far back here with quite a short, I don't think too short, but quite a short driveline. That's connected to the output of our brownie box with that tiny driveline there to allow overdrive, obviously in 4-wheel drive, but you'd never do that. But mainly for low range 4-wheel drive double reduction off the brownie. And then that hooks to another small driveline, which goes to the output shaft of our transmission. The MP205 has the front axle powered by this drive shaft, which actually is long enough that it goes to a carrier bearing and then to the front axle. The wheelbase of this truck being longer than I'm used to and seemingly extended with these springs also makes that drive shaft up there longer. Overall, I think that's a pretty good summary of what we're starting with. I vaguely mentioned kind of where we're going with it or where I plan to end up, but to get into more detail about that, I obviously want this truck to be period correct and restored, and I mean like nice paint, door seals, nice restoration, not just kind of pull it out of a field, get it to run, drive, stop. On top of that, I'd like to use this rig as a work rig, or be able to use it as a work rig, kind of build it up as one of those old school service trucks. But I want to max it out, right? Like if you could theoretically have everything. So if I can, you know, this is all very ambitious, but I plan to put my 1936 South Bend gap bed lathe in the back of the truck, driven off a PTO or some sort of power unit. The lathe I'm talking about, this is the 1936 11-inch throw, 5.5-foot bed, South Bend gap bed lathe. So obviously it wouldn't be on the stands in the back of the truck. It'd be mounted. I don't know if you guys have seen those mobile machine shop trucks that they used to have, but it'd be kind of like that setup. So these legs would be off, and you know. I want a PTO welder like you'd find that you could attach to tractors or belt drives, whatever that may be, to put in the back of the truck, so it'll save some weight and be driven off the truck. I want a wet kit. I want air. I'd like to have, obviously, winching on probably both ends, but at least the front end. And a rear PTO like you'd see in the old Power Wagons or Jeeps, where they'd have the PTO off of the rear end of the truck. And then some of them had like a bolt-on 3-point kit and stuff, which would be super cool to have too. Maybe it's just something I'd take on and put on or take off, you know. Keep it somewhat modular, but additionally, I'd like one of those right angle adapters to the belt drive too for the rear end on the PTO. So if I go to old tractor shows, I can power, you know, an ice cream maker or something fun. All of that's very ambitious, I know, and that might be far in the future, a bit beyond, you know, just fixing the truck up. But it's cool stuff to strive for. With all that being said, if you know of any information on some of these older motors, any of the diesel motors, namely the D301, the 282, the sleeveless ones, but even just the other units, or if you know if there's a combine or a cotton picker or something sitting with one of these just rotting away in it, please let me know. It's always good to know where stuff is, maybe have some extra parts. On top of that, as you know, these trucks are super rare, so if you know of a complete diesel version of one of these trucks, please let me know. I'd love to add it to my registry and then the common registry between me and a bunch of other folks. The next steps for this project are going to be to start with either finding a titled cab or complete truck or something in the middle of those two for completing, you know, the base of this entire project. Obviously, I need a cab at very least. So if I just got a cab and the front fenders and that kind of stuff, I could just swap this onto this body. But we'll see how things go. It might be easier to get another truck with a title and no engine maybe, and just put this motor and the auxiliary equipment into that truck and then kind of fix it from there. But yeah, so if you have any leads on that too, please let me know. I'd love to know. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed. I'm really excited for this project. It's a dream of mine, really. And I hope to take you all along with me for that journey.